Hello, welcome to another Talk Architecture podcast, and I'm your host, Naziati Muhammad Yaqub. This is a 15-minute commentary on something that I saw on the LinkedIn post. And I've been retired a few years now. I am not engaged or being employed by a university, so I could be critical regarding architecture education even more. So I'm taking this opportunity to talk about something that I saw and have felt a lot in the last decade with regard to architecture education. It says here there is shall we say, the International Union of Architects, the Architectural Education Commission, with the third international webinar on aligning education across allied built environment disciplines. One of my pet peeves is exactly that, because there were many podcast episodes which I believe even more and more about architecture education embedded in the arts and humanities disciplines. The discipline is arts and humanities and not social science. So I just want to say again, quantitative surveying, building surveying, planning, and similar built environment disciplines, including project management. They are great when in the current practice of architectural practice, they are great. They're part of the consultants team to do with the built environment. But the architecture, practice, need to accommodate to that, need to accommodate to the built environment requirements. But on the other hand, the architecture practice is linked towards arts and humanities and the creative profession. The creative professions with architecture comes from the arts and humanities, unless they're very commercial. So commercial projects could be more towards these other disciplines in practice, but in education, you don't have to. You can teach building bylaws. I say it again. You can teach building bylaws and a critique on building bylaws during studio in the context of many things, not only just focusing on the building regulation. But you can also not critique building bylaws and prioritize design problems. What are design problems? In the humanities, we're talking about, designing for human beings. You are a discipline that requires some intuition, some empathy, some regard, some study on the human condition. I don't think there's other disciplines do that. You have straddling between arts and sciences when you think about architecture. But you don't have to hold up a hole into social science like these other disciplines. Now, I'm coming from the academic background. That's why I'm critical of it. And I see the watered down version of architecture happens when we start aligning this education across built environment discipline. So I want to just talk about the quote that is in this post by, the Commission on Architectural Education at UIA. It says here that this webinar, the panel discussion, seeks to explore innovative ways to bridge disciplinary boundaries without compromising the core competencies. You know how it is when boundaries are bridged. You can't protect them, right? You're allowing your boundaries to be broken. And you have a core competency, and then the way they see design is different than what architects see design. You get what I mean? I mean, there is this, they don't have poetics, they don't have phenomenology, they don't have, a lot of schools of thoughts considered in architecture design. They only want to know one way of design. So that's the compromise. That is the bridging the disciplinary boundaries. You say that you don't compromise, but you will compromise. And we need to be careful about this. If you want to look at the architecture profession as something that is, shall we say, relevant to this day and age, if the architecture profession has stayed true to itself all this while, and now is going to head and being, compromised in this way, where it's regarded as just embellishing the structure, form making, and trying to make it look nice. There's evidently lack of control in terms of what the human being experience in architecture, because you already given the control to the other parties. Yes, I may be saying very theoretically, but even theoretically is something we need to be worried about. So further quote from this post says, integrating disciplines is not about diluting expertise, but about enriching it. In a world of complex challenges, we must break silos, collaborate across boundaries, and reimagine education for sustainable, regenerative futures. The future of design lies in shared knowledge and collective innovation. Together, we can create environments that are both resilient and socially responsible. This is under education, okay? I think 23 or 25 years of architecture education, actually 28, but 25 years in University Malaya, we did programs that we invited lecturers from the other disciplines, and they respect the creativity part, they respect the architectural integrity of a project, and we respect the differences. We get the input from the engineers, we get the input from the building surveyors. They know where they need to be when during the process of design, building surveyors, usually to do with a building already built, like in historical buildings, in auditing the aspects of a building and so on. They do learn about sustainability as well. And that is after the creative part, after the design has happened. And then you have the quantity survey, which do evaluation. They say economic part. It's another thing that quantity surveyors does. Cost and law. And also things to do with legislation and stuff. So we have the planners, who is more to do with zoning. Physical planning is phased out, and now more to do with strategic planning out there. That's another debate with regard to urban designers and planners, how urban designers need to be revived back in the planning, but they are designers, you see, so they bridge the architect and the designer's realm. So we've done this before. We've done programs and in a way, students and lecturers from the other courses learn from us. But have we learned from them? I would like to debate that you could have in a longer program, a project, looking at cost implication, the guidelines. It could be part of a design problem. Set a budget of 1 million and then you design something, and then you can have like something of a cost, a software that costs out your building. But I had experience for my design thesis, an economist coming in, and they allow us to actually think for ourselves, what is the cost of a building? And we actually did a cost-benefit analysis where the benefit of what we do is also considered, and the benefit is social benefit. So you see, it made me think a bit about how the impact of my building is in terms of how I need to enrich the programs, and in terms of how it would benefit the society, the community or the society or the site where it is, the neighborhood, when offset with the cost of the land, of the building, and so on. That was very interesting, in fact. But I'm learning it. As the designer, as the person who's doing the project, I'm learning that. And that's not actually a quantitative surveyor thing. That is not even a planning. It could be a bit of planning or feasibility studies. So it was useful in terms of thinking about my project, how it impacts the society around it, how it's not abrasive, how it's not aloof, and not thinking about the society benefiting from it. That was a good one. Because when we look at costs and benefits, usually we just look at the costs. How much is it built and how much it costs to the developer. It's kind of like one-sided, because in society, there's not only developers, there's also the residents, there's also the user, there's also the people around it. And that was something that I learned in England in the late 1980s. Yeah. So when they say integrating disciplines is not about diluting expertise, it's kind of like, I don't understand the statement. When you study, whatever you study, like architecture, education for 3 years, you're just learning the ropes. And what are you saying here? Because when you talk about architecture education, if you're talking about graduates and postgraduates, they're not yet an expertise in the way that they are just exploring at the moment, giving hypotheses, looking at design problem, building up their understanding about how to go about designing. I don't know, this is a non-statement, but about enriching it. And it says after that, not about diluting expertise, but about enriching it. In practice, you could probably find this more, but why in education? Because education is fundamental. In a world of complex challenges, we must break silos. Now, this other statement is a statement I've been hearing all these 20 years, where we are in different silos. When you talk about silos, you talk about local authorities, where this department, the control department, and the master planning department, and the implementation department are doing different things, and you get different solution being built, or some sort of evidence of the silos. When you talk about education, there's no silos actually. All you need to do is do programs, and then how innovative do you want it to be? You just do your own thing, and then you learn from others. Just like an architecture student would learn from others. If they go to a workshop where there is a craftsman doing boat building, and they're trying to design a similar thing on a site, like a boat building workshop with a community, they actually observe, analyze, and reflect on it in the best possible way at that level of education. And they often just reproduce what they see, and that's the innovation that they will have, in which there's art and culture involved there, in which it could give inspiration to what they design. And they learn something through that process. We did that in the second year. That is like an interdisciplinary thing, where they actually learn about sociology or about economy, through understanding, through observation of the people that they're designing for. Because I see this as a messing about of the other built environment disciplines with architecture. I don't see it any other way. And I see some architects who are, I call pseudo-architects, and they're in academia, and they're trying to brand a different sort of architecture. And it's very, very, shall we say, it's beyond irritating now, because the dumb down of the architecture education and architecture discipline is quite apparent here. Together, we can create environments that are both resilient and socially responsible. I've seen this quote several times throughout the last couple of decades. When sustainability started at the turn of the century, and then suddenly we have a focus on education now. Okay, good luck with the webinar, and I, for one, am kind of skeptical about it all. So this is something that we need to think about, because what is architecture education now? And I'm worried because the students of architecture it's like they're learning piecemeal rather than holistically. A bit here, a bit of project, a bit of messing about with the built environment. Faculty, they're not on their own. They're not having time to read books and having nice, interesting conversation. And their lecturers they only have 20% of the key performance indicators on teaching, by the way. This is what's happening in Malaysian schools of architecture. An architecture lecturer has to do research about 70 to 80%, plus admin and other community stuff, committees stuff, and then only 20% on teaching. It's no wonder that architecture students don't understand what an architect is when they graduate. And even in the Malaysian Architecture Week recently, we eventually talk about education, even though much of it is celebrating the architect's work out there. So let us be challenged about this. Thank you very much.